Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 15.5 Beta 1 was released earlier this week. I've been using it for the past few days full-time on my iPhone 13 Pro Max and also my iPad Pro. I want to talk about the overall experience I've been having, as well as what you had to say based off the YouTube community poll, where over 15,000 people voted and over 150 people commented. I've taken all of the information from the comments, compiled them together to get the best understanding of what this update is like overall. Also, I wanted to go over battery and more and talk about whether or not you should install iOS 15.5 betas, as now it's the beginning of those betas. But before we talk about that, I did want to mention a few new changes or features that Apple put in this update that I didn't mention in the initial What's New video. Now, the first one has to do with the Home app. So if you go into the Home app and maybe you have a HomePod, go into that HomePod, scroll down to where you get to settings. So we'll go down here, there's settings, go into settings, scroll down in settings, you'll see that we have Wi-Fi network. Now we have the signal strength of the Wi-Fi network within the app. So it's telling us the signal strength to the HomePods where we didn't have that before. So that's something new that they've updated with 15.5. Also within the Wallet app, they've updated this as well. So I did mention some of the changes with Apple Cash, but if we go into Wallet, into the Apple Card, and under the physical card, you can see at the top, it says titanium card. They've changed the wording here, and that refers to the actual card that you can get as a physical card. It's titanium. Mine has a little bit of wear on it from a wallet it was in for a while, but it's a titanium card, and now it just says titanium card. So it's a small update, but something they've changed. Now, a new feature within iOS 15.5 Beta 1 is the ability for an app developer to link outside of their app to a website to manage your account. This is not something they've allowed before and are now allowing with 15.5. And what that means is maybe you have Hulu or Netflix and you want to manage your account. The developer can put a link within their app. You can tap the link and then go to their website to manage the account. This is something that wasn't possible before, and Apple is updating with 15.5. So I mentioned this in the news video earlier this week, but it's something that they've implemented in this current version. Now, Apple this week also updated its iWork apps. That means Keynote, Pages, and Numbers. So what you can see here, well, let's go into Photos. What you can see here is Pages. This is a new icon for Pages, and there's some new icons as well as some nice features as well. So if you use VoiceOver, it says Pages can read comments and track changes using VoiceOver. So there's additional features. These are free apps. And as you can see here, Keynote and Numbers is also updated. Keynote gets the biggest icon change. I'll show you that in just a moment. And then also Numbers, which is like Excel, create formulas and quickly fill cells with autofill using VoiceOver. So that's available right now. You can download that on your iPhone or iPad or Mac as well. And they changed the icons, and you can see that on Twitter. Basic Apple Guy actually posted this, and you can see what they looked like before, previous, new, and what they look like compared to macOS. So on macOS, it looks very similar to what we have now. Apple changed the Apple Pencil that was on the previous Pages icon that we have on iOS to sort of match the one on Mac. It's just not exactly the same, but looks more like a pen. And then on Keynote, they actually added a graphic to the podium. Numbers hasn't changed too much, but they removed the line underneath the different bar graphs here. So there's some slight changes, and maybe this hints at iOS 16, where we could have things that are more consistent across the OS between iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. So maybe we'll see some more depth in the future icons and some changes as well. But again, we won't know until Apple actually releases that. Now, as far as the overall experience of iOS 15.5 Beta 1, like I said, I've been using this full time. The good news here is everything seems to be nice and fast and smooth, from ProMotion to the overall experience scrolling. Also, as far as cellular goes, I've actually had a better experience this time around. So the overall experience seems to be good, bug-free for me, not for everyone, but for me, it's been very bug-free and quite good. We'll talk about battery life in just a moment, but cellular data has actually been pretty good. Switching between different data modes, between 5G, 5G UC, and 4G seems to be faster for me. So if you're maybe listening to a song or downloading something, listening to a podcast, streaming, it seems to switch much quicker this time around. So last time it would switch, it would maybe hiccup for 30 seconds, then work again. Now it seems to maybe have a little bit of a slowdown or stop, and then it will play again. But that seems to be something between switching cell towers and things like that. Others have said the same thing. However, it does seem better in this particular version, and there was a modem update with this version. Others are experiencing lag in the App Store for some, so whether that be on an older device, maybe an iPhone 6s or an 8 Plus here, if we go into the App Store, some have said that there's lag and stutters from time to time within the store, but not really throughout the OS. Most people report that it's actually quite fast and it's not really lagging at all. So they say that it's quite good as far as overall performance, and the experience seems to be good. I did have one person say that their AirPods were not connecting properly. So with AirPods 3, let's open them up and see what happens here, see if they connect. And they connected to my iPad, and it's slowest to connect to the 13 Pro Max for some reason. But sometimes when you have a bunch of devices, it gets a little confused, but it did open up on all of them by itself. One person said they had to repair them. Also, another person seems to be having an issue with CarPlay. That's a continuous issue that Apple has not solved yet. And most of the people that mentioned the problems with CarPlay tend to be on Hondas for some reason, Honda and Acura. So I don't know if it's an incompatibility between the device and the car or something that Honda's doing versus what Apple's doing, but it seems to be consistently something with Honda for some reason. So I haven't heard from too many people with things such as Toyota or Mercedes or BMW with problems, mostly just Honda. But if you have a different car, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below if you're having similar issues. Now, the storage bug is something that was resolved a while ago as far as it loading overall. I do have quite a few people messaging me saying they're concerned about the overall storage usage. So I wanted to explain that just a moment. We'll let my iPhone storage load here. It seems to be fine. It does take a moment to load though. And if we go down, you'll see at the bottom, it's still calculating, but it's using 4.61 gigabytes, kind of extra storage. And the iPhone will actually use this from time to time, and it will change often as it's using data in the background, the other system data. So if this is a big concern, you can use different programs on a Mac or Windows computer to clear this. But typically, as long as you're not running out of storage, I would just ignore it. It's not usually too big of a deal for most people. So let's take a look on the 8 Plus if we have a similar situation here. Now, this is a 64 gigabyte iPhone 8 Plus, so we'll give it just a moment. It is taking a while to load. The initial loading of the storage is quite slow for some, but at least it loads, where before it wasn't doing that. And again, you'll see I'm using 1.98 gigabytes. Some people have seen this up in the 60 gigabyte region. So see if it comes down over the next few days. Typically that will happen. So most of the time it will take care of itself. After a few days, everything's done compiling or doing everything in the background. Then it's just finished and it comes down on its own. But if it doesn't, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Now, as far as overall battery life, let's go into settings. We'll go down to battery health. I'm at 100%. I charge this every single night, put it on the charger at night, take it off in the morning, put it in my car when I'm driving. I really don't pay attention to it, but I wanted to share it with you just to see how it's holding up. And you'll see my battery, we'll go to yesterday. I only had 2 hours and 14 minutes of screen on time, 6 hours and 22 minutes of screen off time. I had mail using a lot of background activity, or a lot of notifications rather, and Twitter using a lot. That's not really great battery life. However, I still went to bed with about 50% battery left. 3 hours and 15 minutes of screen on time the day before, and music is using background activity still. So I don't know if they've fixed the music bug or not, but battery life is okay for me, but definitely not as good as 15.4.1 or earlier than that. I also had someone else named Eshwar send in their battery life, so I thought we'd take a look, and you can see the screenshot here on a 13 Pro Max. So with about 75% of their battery life used, 10 hours and 8 minutes of screen on time, 45 minutes of screen off time. That's right where you would expect it to be, so he could get 12 or 14 hours of screen on time with that specific usage. So that's pretty good for a beta. However, that's not a priority for Apple with betas. So if you're concerned about that, you might want to hold off installing it. Also on the iPad, the experience has been pretty good, which it has been right along on the iPad, but battery life is always the concern. So battery on the iPad, we'll let it load here just a moment. The last 10 days. I did charge it today. You'll see at 7:13 p.m. or a.m. rather, it was charged to 100%. And the day before, I'm only getting about 5 hours of screen on time with it. So I have to charge it way more often than I would like to, and hopefully Apple resolves this in the future. But even with 15.4.1, it did not seem to really resolve my battery issues for the most part. So it's still got about 97% battery health left, so there's really not a concern there as far as that goes. But for some reason, the battery is just not great on this iPad for some reason. And I've wiped it and tried everything. So maybe we'll try that again when iOS 16 betas come out. Now, I did run benchmarks on this just to share with you. So we'll go into Geekbench, and you'll see on single core, it scored 1,735 for single core, 4,803 for multi-core. That is the highest multi-core score I've had in a very long time, if ever. So if we go back through, let me look over some of these. We're going all the way back to, well, February 28th on 15.4. I actually scored that, but I don't usually get that high of a score. So 4,800 is quite high, going all the way back many, many years. Even on different devices here, I'm not seeing 4,800. So that's quite high for this device and very, very good. So that's a good sign as far as a beta goes. Let's go up to April 8th here. It's a good sign as far as a beta goes. It's performing like you would expect. And I did run them on the other devices here just so you could see. And it's not as good on all of them. So on this one here, the 8 Plus, you'll see 916 for single core, 2188 for multi-core. And then also on the 11, I had 1,333 for single core, 3,021 for multi-core. And then finally on the iPad, and the only reason I'm reading these out is someone asked me to that's visually impaired. So thought I'd read these out so you could better understand them. On the iPad Pro 12.9 from 2021, 1,688 for single core, 7,169 for multi-core. So all pretty good scores. Again, it's a little early on to say that performance is going to be affected at all, but it seems to be pretty good overall. Now, this past week, Apple stopped signing iOS 15.4. That means you can no longer downgrade to that version, and that only leaves us with iOS 15.4.1 and 15.5 betas. Normally, when they do that, they release a small public release within 1 to 2 or even 3 weeks. Normally around 2 weeks, but what that means is we could see another update such as iOS 15.4.2 to resolve additional bugs, maybe add a small feature, but that's unlikely with a point update, and then also additional security bugs. Usually that's what happens. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's fairly likely based off what we've seen over the past many years. But again, Apple is always changing things with that. But we could see 15.4.2 and then also iOS 15.5 beta 2, of course, usually within 2 weeks. So normally, since we're just getting started early on with this beta, normally we'll have a beta within the next 2 weeks up to beta 2. So I wouldn't really expect anything this week unless it's 15.4.2. Maybe next or 2 weeks from now on the 18th or 19th or even the 20th, we could see iOS 15.5 beta 2. So that's sort of what I'm expecting at this point. And then we'll see the major changes at WWDC on June 6th. Apple announced WWDC22 this past week, and they did not send out invites, but rather sent out a press release and then also updated their website. So you can see this here. Also in the developer app, you can see it. And on June 6th to the 10th, it will be a virtual event. Now, some students and developers can go watch it virtually, sitting there and watching it at the same time as us, a pre-recorded event, but that will be either invite or you'll have to apply for that. So it looks like you'll have to apply based off of this. And on June 6th, we'll typically have a keynote where they go over the next operating systems. So usually around 1 p.m. Eastern time or 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then we'll see iOS 16, iPadOS 16, watchOS 9, macOS 13, and any other additional updates they have. They'll show us the major feature changes of that and then start with beta 1 on June 6th. So expect June 6th to see iOS 16 beta 1 with a public release in September. We'll have iOS 15 betas all the way up until then usually as well. So it's going to be a very exciting couple of months after that. So I can't wait for that event. And hopefully we'll see some major changes this time around, as we already are with some of those icons. So maybe we'll see more than just an icon redesign. In a moment, we'll take a look at the YouTube community poll and some of your comments. But first, I wanted to go over whether or not you should install 15.5 beta 1. Normally, I say with early betas, skip it if you're concerned about anything as far as battery life or bugs. If you you want to try out new features or just want to be on the latest version, you can try it, but make sure you have a backup or an extra device to try it on. I don't always recommend on your main device if you have critical applications, use important accessibility features or things like that. If you don't care about that, or you have a backup on a Mac or Windows computer, then you could try it out. But just beware that it is a beta, and if there are bugs, you need to report them in the feedback app. So that helps Apple fix things for everyone and see what the major issues are. Now let's take a look at the YouTube community poll, and you'll see here 15,000 votes. Let me refresh. And you'll see 12% are on 15.5 beta 1. 75% of you are still on 15.4.1, which makes a lot of sense to stay on the most stable version. 2% are still on 14.8.1. 2% are on 13.7 or older, and 9% are using Android. I believe that's up 1% from previous different polls that I've run. Now let's take a look at some of your comments. I have my iPad, and let's go ahead and take a look at what you had to say. Now, I'm curious if you like these sorts of videos where I'm on the camera talking to you with the comments, or you prefer them outdoors, or you don't really care. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Now, Jotham Chin says, hopefully I'm saying that properly, iOS 15.5 beta 1, iPhone SE 2, so far is okay. Battery is my only concern. Shorter than on 15.4 and before. On my iPhone 12 mini, iOS 15.4.1 battery is getting better overall. Sometimes touch is laggy. Keep up these videos. Terry says 12 Pro Max, 15.5 beta, and it's running buttery smooth. Battery life is great and had no bugs so far. And with 150 different comments, I think it's a good sample of what it's like for some people, but not everyone is on this version. So it seems like 15.4.1 is much better for most people. Manish Bansal says, the battery life has significantly improved after updating to 15.4.1. I'm getting an average battery life of 6 hours and 30 minutes once fully charged and used, and device remains idle, then my battery remains 20 hours on my iPhone 10. Thank you, Apple. Timmy Fang says iOS 15.5 has been good so far. The only issue I encountered was having to completely repair my AirPods Pro. So that's what I mentioned earlier in the video. For some reason, sometimes the AirPods have done that. They've done that to me in the past, just not with this version. Jansky Tech said, TBH, I cannot find any negatives, but only positives. Both my iPhone 13 Pro Max and 11 Pro have had a boost in performance, stability with minor extra battery drain, which still I have to further check to be sure that as it's minimal. I do not mind having a tiny extra battery drain when seeing good performance on iOS 15.5 beta 1. Thanks, and keep up with your pro analysis of beta updates. Thanks and well done. And thank you. And some people say I only read positive comments, but honestly, I could not find a whole lot of negative comments on 15.5. So I do try to find them. It just seems to happen that this time around there aren't that many, which is a good thing. This late in iOS 15, you'd think that we would have really good experiences. iNUWA or INUWA said iOS 15.5 on iPhone 7 is okay, I guess, because it has some lags on App Store. The battery life is fine and the overall experience is great. Mr. White said battery is great again for my 13 Pro Max with 15.4.1. I'm going to stay on it for a while. 15.4 was a mess for me. And I think I've seen that from most people. 15.4.1 fixes the battery issues. Most people are just staying on that version for a while, so everything is sort of settled. And then once the final version of 15.5 comes out, I think you'll see a lot of people upgrade to that, assuming battery's okay with it as well. Yup says 13 Pro Max here, anything is better than iOS 14. And I put this comment down because most people loved iOS 14, so it's great to see some people saying it's much, much better. Alex N said iOS 15.5 beta 1 ruined the battery on my iPhone 13 Pro, and I can't even get through a school day without charging it. And that's always the dangers of running a beta. Sometimes battery's good, sometimes it's not, but the focus is to fix bugs while implementing new features and changes. So if it's a big concern, definitely downgrade if you have the ability. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see a new beta within a couple weeks. Boo Rita said, Mr. Zolo, can you speak about Apple's policies on removing headphones and chargers? They say it's for the environment, but people end up paying more and wasting more plastic on packaging for headphones and chargers. So there's some good points to be made here. Now, as far as removing the charger, I thought the idea was okay, but too early. And the reason I say too early is Apple switched over to USB-C. When you switch to USB-C, well, everyone that had chargers had USB-A plug style chargers. So you really needed to give it another year and just sort of say, we're going to do this. for the environment, but then do it after. So I think the overall idea is good, but I think it was too early. That's just my opinion. But overall, I think that part's good. As far as the headphones go, though, headphones are something that I think people just end up buying AirPods and mostly wireless headphones these days. So most people that use wired headphones typically are going for higher end audio headphones, maybe it could be Sennheiser or something else where they want better quality. So I think those people were going to buy headphones anyway. I rarely see wired headphones on anyone anymore. I know some people still use it, but it's pretty rare these days. But as far as the packaging in addition to that, maybe Apple should implement free packaging where they just hand it to you in a store where it has the little paper wrap around it. Maybe something along those lines. And I do think we're getting to something like that, hopefully in the near future. As far as the comments, that's everything this time around. And as far as iOS 15.5 Beta 1, if I do find any additional features, I'll mention them in future videos, but I expect usually by Beta 2 or 3, they implement some major changes. So hopefully we'll see that, but I really don't expect anything until iOS 16. But if you found anything else, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And of course, if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.